Something unusual happened in Apple's production cycle. Mass production testing for the iPhone 18 Pro Max officially kicked off in late February 2026. That's not strange. What's strange is that alongside it, Apple is preparing to launch a foldable iPhone and then wait until spring 2027 to release the standard iPhone 18 and the more affordable 18e. That timing caught my attention. Apple has spent over a decade training consumers to expect one major iPhone event every September. One keynote, one lineup, one purchasing decision. Now they're splitting it across 6 months. The Pro models and a foldable drop in September 2026. The standard models don't arrive until spring 2027. What this tells me is that Apple isn't just releasing phones anymore, they're rethinking how to sustain attention in a saturated market. At first, this sounded like a supply chain adjustment. Maybe component shortages forced their hand, maybe the foldable needed more runway. But then I looked at the structure. The iPhone 18 Pro, Pro Max, and foldable iPhone launched together in September 2026. The iPhone 18, iPhone 18e, and a new device called iPhone Air follow in spring 2027. That's not a delay, that's a strategy. The clear pattern here is that Apple is creating two distinct purchasing windows, one for premium buyers who want the latest technology and are willing to pay for it, another for mainstream buyers who prioritize value over cutting-edge features. This also means Apple gets two media cycles instead of one, two waves of coverage, two opportunities to dominate tech headlines. From a brand visibility standpoint, that's smart. There's also a quieter benefit. Spreading releases across 6 months gives Apple more flexibility with supply chain constraints. They can prioritize production capacity for the premium models during the holiday shopping season, then shift focus to volume models in the spring. That doesn't look accidental. Here's where the engineering story gets interesting. The iPhone 18 Pro Max will debut Apple's A20 Pro chip built on TSMC's 2-nanometer process. For context, the current iPhone 17 series uses 3-nanometer chips. Moving from 3 to 2 nanometer isn't a marketing number. It's a genuine architectural shift that affects everything from power efficiency to thermal performance. What caught my attention was the 12 gigs of RAM across all iPhone 18 models. That's a substantial jump, and it suggests Apple is preparing for something computationally demanding: on-device generative AI, advanced Apple Intelligence features, multitasking workloads that current iPhones would struggle with. Apple doesn't throw memory at devices for fun. They're historically conservative with RAM. If they're moving to 12 gigs across the entire lineup, there's a software roadmap that requires it. This likely isn't random. This is infrastructure for features that haven't been announced yet. Leaks suggest the iPhone 18 Pro Max will feature a 5,200 milliamps battery, the largest ever in an iPhone. Combined with the efficient 2-nanometer chip and iOS 20 optimizations expected in fall 2026, some estimates point to 40 hours of usage on a single charge. Let me be clear about something. Battery life improvements aren't exciting to talk about. They're not flashy like a foldable display or a new camera system, but for most people, battery anxiety is real. The difference between charging once a day and charging every other day changes how you use your phone. Here's the trade-off. To fit a larger battery, the Pro Max reportedly adopts a slightly thicker chassis. Apple is prioritizing function over slimness here. That's a notable departure from the thinness obsession that defined iPhone design for years. Online discourse optimizes specs. Most people optimize comfort and predictability. A thicker phone with 2-day battery life will matter more to mainstream users than a millimeter of profile reduction. Most iPhone camera upgrades follow a familiar pattern: better sensors, improved computational photography, minor hardware tweaks. The iPhone 18 Pro Max does something different. The 48 megapixels main camera will feature variable aperture, a first for iPhone. This allows the lens opening to adjust dynamically, improving low light performance and depth of field control. It's a DSLR style feature that gives photographers manual light control without manual complexity. That's where it gets interesting. Variable aperture is exclusive to the Pro Max within the iPhone 18 lineup, not the Pro, not the standard models, just the Pro Max. This suggests Apple is creating sharper product differentiation within its own premium tier. If you want the best camera hardware, you're buying the most expensive phone. There's also a supply chain story here. Samsung is reportedly developing a 3-layer stacked image sensor intended for the iPhone 18. This sensor integrates 3 layers of circuitry, improving responsiveness, reducing noise, and increasing dynamic range. If confirmed, this ends Sony's exclusive hold on Apple's camera hardware supply chain, a decade-long partnership. That's a significant shift. Apple rarely changes major suppliers without strategic reasoning. Either Samsung offered something Sony couldn't match, or Apple wanted to diversify their sourcing for resilience. The timing suggests Apple is serious about camera leadership, and they're willing to restructure supplier relationships to get there. All iPhone 18 models will also include a 24 megapixel front-facing camera, up from 18 megapixels on the iPhone 17 series. For content creators and video callers, that's a meaningful jump. Bloomberg reported on February 24th, 2026, that the iPhone 18 Pro and Pro Max will feature a noticeably smaller dynamic island. The pill-shaped cutout that houses the front camera and Face ID sensors is shrinking, with more Face ID components moving under the display. This isn't just aesthetic. The dynamic island has been a visual compromise since its introduction, a necessary cutout for technology that hadn't yet been fully hidden. Shrinking it means Apple is making progress on the long-promised under-display future. The display itself remains 6.9 inches, an LTP OLED panel with adaptive refresh rate from 1 to 120 Hz and peak brightness of at least 3,200 nits. Those are premium specs, but they're not revolutionary. The story here is refinement, not transformation. Color options are getting more expressive. Weibo Leaker Digital Chat Station reports Pro models will be available in coffee, purple, and burgundy, with no black option expected, similar to the iPhone 17 Pro. Bloomberg's Mark Gurman separately confirmed a deep burgundy finish is being tested as the flagship color. Whether those colors resonate with buyers, we'll see. Apple's color decisions sometimes feel like they're testing how much influence they have over aesthetic trends. The foldable iPhone launching alongside the iPhone 18 Pro Max is Apple's most significant form factor experiment since the original iPhone. Details remain limited. What we know, it's launching in September 2026. It's expected to start at $1,999 or more, and it represents a major shift in Apple's product strategy. That's not a lot of information, but here's what I'm watching. Samsung has been refining foldables for years. Google entered with the Pixel Fold. Motorola, Huawei, various Chinese manufacturers. The category is established. Apple isn't first. They're not even second. They're arriving years after competitors prove the concept. That's typical Apple. They rarely enter categories early. They wait until the technology is mature enough to meet their standards, then launch with a refined implementation. The question is whether foldable technology has reached that point, and whether Apple's version offers enough differentiation to justify the premium pricing. From a strategic standpoint, the foldable positions Apple in a price tier they've never occupied before. Starting at $1,999, It sits above even the Pro Max. This creates a new ceiling for iPhone pricing and a new aspirational product for the ecosystem. Despite the upgrades, pricing rumors suggest Apple aims to hold starting prices steady. The iPhone 18 Pro is expected to start at $999, the Pro Max at $1,199. That's notable because component costs have risen across the industry. 2 nanometer chips aren't cheap. Camera innovations require R&D investment, and larger batteries add material costs. Apple is absorbing those costs rather than passing them to consumers, at least at the entry level. Higher storage configurations could see modest adjustments, and the foldable iPhone at $1,999 creates a new product category with its own pricing logic. Other anticipated features include up to 2 terabytes of storage, faster 40-watt wired charging, Wi-Fi 7 support, and Bluetooth 6.0. This is shaping up to be the most complete Pro Max Apple has ever built. Satellite messaging, first introduced for emergency use, is expected to see expanded functionality in the iPhone 18 Pro Max. This could enable broader use cases, staying connected in remote areas during natural disasters or in regions with limited cellular infrastructure. For most users, this feature will sit unused. For adventurers, outdoor professionals, and people in areas with unreliable coverage, it's genuinely valuable. What's interesting is the trajectory. Apple introduced satellite as an emergency feature. Now they're expanding it toward general connectivity. This suggests the infrastructure partnership with Globalstar is maturing, and Apple sees satellite as a long-term differentiator rather than a niche safety feature. There's a through line connecting everything we've discussed. The split release strategy isn't just about logistics. It's about creating multiple moments of consumer consideration. The A20 Pro chip and 12 gigs RAM aren't just specs. They're infrastructure for AI features that will define the next software generation. The battery jump isn't just convenience. It's a response to years of user feedback about endurance, and the camera innovations aren't incremental. They're exclusive differentiation that pushes buyers toward the highest tier. And the foldable, it's Apple signaling that the smartphone form factor isn't finished evolving. What we're seeing is a company that knows the smartphone market has matured. Growth isn't coming from convincing more people to buy smartphones. Most already have them. Growth is coming from convincing existing users to move up tiers, to adopt new form factors, to pay more for differentiation they can feel. The iPhone 18 Pro Max, expected to launch around September 9th or 10th, 2026, with sales starting September 18th or 19th, isn't just another annual update. It's a calibration of Apple's entire product strategy for a market where innovation has to work harder to matter. Whether that strategy works, whether the split releases sustain interest, whether the foldable finds an audience, whether the battery gains are enough to influence purchasing decisions, we'll find out next year. But from where I'm sitting, Apple isn't playing it safe. They're adapting, and adaptation is more interesting than iteration. See you next week.